Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Blue Jays Today. We're your boys. We always got something to say about the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Adam Peddle.
And I'm your host, Nicholas Playalog. And you can tell by the smiles on our faces that we have a very special guest today. It is my pleasure, it is my privilege to welcome in for the first time on this channel, Mr. Bob Nightingale. Welcome in, sir. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking baseball, talking Toronto Blue Jays with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
First thing, how are you doing? Oh, I know that, we had a little chat off camera, but we were all kind of lamenting that this is getting into the busy time right now. I assume you're definitely gearing up for All-Star, trade deadline, all that stuff.
Yeah, All-Star camp festivities actually start, on Friday with the HBCU game. Then you got the Futures game Saturday, the draft Sunday. That's why you don't see too many trades because everybody's busy with the draft. So you'll see stuff happen, right after the All-Star break. The All-Star game is actually Tuesday. Games start up Thursday and Friday. Then I think you'll see, GM start to get busy.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, real quick question. I know we didn't write this one down, but what do you think about the All-Star game? And I know there's been a lot of talk and conversation about a lot of guys getting snubbed. Like, what is one of your snubs that you're like, wow, I can't believe, the fans didn't vote these guys in?
Yeah, you see so many guys get at it, and we've seen it already. But there's so many All-Stars, it's funny that guys will still get snubbed. But the funny thing is the players who did the reserves. So right. If a player gets mad, point out your own guys. So, yeah, you got I think the biggest snub now is Seiya Suzuki. 77, 78 ribbies is like, one of the most ribbies ever. Before the All-Star game, 24 home runs, he's not chosen. Obviously, you got George Springer in Toronto. You got, Juan Soto, the Mets. I wish it was a utility player category.
Agreed.
Ernie Clement should be in that category, and he'd be the All-Star.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean, it feels like I guess it's a good thing, but like there's just so many good players in MLB right now that, it's hard to fit an entire team of quote unquote All-Stars on one roster. But to your point about George Springer, that has been one of the biggest surprises for us. One of the biggest surprises for Toronto Blue Jays fans is his resurgence. And I would also argue that just the resurgence of this entire Toronto Blue Jays team and this roster, because yes, they brought in Santander in the offseason. Yes, they traded for Andres Jimenez, but honestly, like,
they're not even playing.
They're not even on the field, man. It's like the Toronto Blue Jays right now are in first place in the AL East because of the great play from a lot of their pre-existing players. So I guess my question to you is, one, did you see any of this current play coming from the Toronto Blue Jays? And two, do you think that this is sustainable for their roster as it stands right now?
I certainly think sustainable, but you're right. I mean, you thought the Blue Jays would be aggressive, and they were. They went after Soto just like they went after Ohtani the year before. They had a strong offer out for Pete Alonso. Then when you get those guys, you're like, oh, man, it might be the same old story again. A little bit like Seattle Mariners, where they kind of tease you every year, but don't do it. But you're right. A guy like George Springer, he probably would have been available to anybody in the offseason just to get on that contract. And now he's performing the best he has since he's gotten there. And, bounce back year from Bichette. He'll be a free agent after this year. I think it helped, signing Guerrero. I think that kind of lifted guys in the clubhouse and kind of, brought everybody together like, okay, they're serious about this thing. Let's win. And now it's like you expect them to go get another starter, a marquee starter, and get that team into the World Series because the American League is wide open. I know Detroit Tigers are the favorite, but the American League is there for the taking.
Yeah, I agree, and I like what you brought up there, like getting in a marquee starter, because the Blue Jays they got a deep rotation. They get contributions from Bassett, from Barrios, from Kevin Gausman, and now that Max Scherzer's back, some from him. So they definitely have a veteran rotation in that capacity, but nobody that is actually a top kind of guy. Now, I know that you've heard from Ross Atkins saying that like he's going to be ultra aggressive at the deadline. How aggressive is that going to be? Because you look at the deadline right now, you look at the market, there's a lot of deep starting pitchers, but there aren't many that are that marquee guy. Like, well, how aggressive are they going to be to go try to get one of those players?
I think they'd be very aggressive. You remember, with what they've done and how all the Canada excited, particularly Toronto, was like, you better make the playoffs or some heads are going to roll. If they don't make the playoffs, all of a sudden, hey, is Atkins still going to be there? Is Mark Shapiro going to be there? Will John Schneider be fired? So I think they got to push all their chips in. Worry about the prospects later. Go win right now. And, there's some good guys out there. The Arizona Diamondbacks have, Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, two strong guys who can be frontline guys in rotation. Shane Alcantara, he's not pitching that well, began for 2.5 years. But there's enough out there to go get a Seth Lugo, who's pitching in the division, obviously. So get someone at least be a number 3 starter at best or at worst.
Yeah. Is there any name? Because I know everyone's talking about the Merrill Kellys and the Gallons and stuff, and I agree. I would be over the moon thrilled if Ross Atkins and the Toronto Blue Jays wanted to go out and grab one or maybe a handful of those individuals. But is there anyone that you're hearing could be linked to the Blue Jays, or you're thinking maybe might make sense for them that we haven't necessarily talked about? I know that we saw a rumor just yesterday. I think it was from Hector Gomez. Hector Gomez was bringing up the idea of Jacob deGrom. Maybe Texas wants to get out of that contract because they're not playing so good. Could you see something like that happening, or is there anyone else that you've maybe heard a couple rumblings about that isn't getting enough media coverage right now?
Yeah, not Jacob deGrom. He's not going anywhere. I mean, they still think they have a chance to get in the playoffs, but because they still have him for a few more years, they don't have any problems at all. They can afford what they want. He's having he's in the Cy Young picture. So, no, deGrom is staying put. I'm not sure there's that one guy out there like Chris Sale. He's not going anywhere. Pittsburgh, I think, Keller, they're listening to offers for Keller. He'd be moved. But I don't think there's going to be any big surprise as far as a starting pitcher like, he's available. I think those names are already been out there.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I mean, I think it would take. It would take a lot for Texas and Atlanta to give up those kind of pitchers, especially with the control with deGrom. Now I want to ask you a question because we talked about the Blue Jays and they're deep and they got a lot of guys doing well. You even mentioned Ernie Clement and whatnot. I wanted to ask you: do you see that there's any player or pitcher on the Blue Jays roster that they could use as trade bait? Because we know the Blue Jays, they have a decent farm system, but not the best. And we know that they have a lot of deep position players in terms of the outfield and the infield. Do you see that maybe there could be anyone that could be a dangling target that they might offer up in a trade?
It's hard if you're going for it because the risk if you trade someone on that 26-man roster, he's friends with all those guys. It kind of hurts the morale. Way, if you just trade away a prospect, it's like, these guys don't know him anyway. The players want to win as much as the front office. They don't care what's going to happen 5 years down the line. They want to win right now. So I'm not sure. It's pretty dangerous, I think, to trade away a guy from your 26-man roster, just knowing the kind of effect it's going to be. Same way in the flip end. If you add someone, it lifts everybody's spirits. So I think the Blue Jays are in a situation where they have to trade for someone. If they don't, if they stay pat, then the players are going to say, well, I guess the front office doesn't think we're going to win, so I guess we won't.
Okay, and speaking of those prospects, Toronto Blue Jays fans, they have, honestly, they've kind of fallen in love with the top 2 individuals in the Blue Jay system. Those of them being Arjun Nimmala and Trey Yesavage, and I agree that they are very promising, very exciting, and personally, in a perfect world, I would not like to see them get moved. Could you, though, see Ross Atkins moving one of those guys in a big blockbuster move?
Well, you could if you get a guy with control. So say you get Shane Alcantara, then you get him for 2.5 years. I could see him move like that, but you certainly wouldn't move those guys if you think that much of them, for a Gallen or Kelly, who are free agents at the end of the year. You can't count on them to come back. So I would think only for a guy with club control for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I want to bring up this too, because you brought it up a little bit earlier. The front office, obviously they're going to go aggressive. They're going to be going all in because this is pretty much a do or die year because you got Ross Atkins coming up on a contract and they haven't had a lot of success in the past. What do you think the Blue Jays got to do this year? Is there a certain result they got to achieve, a certain amount of wins they got to get for them to kind of save their jobs and maybe be here next year?
Yeah, and to further expand on that as well, I mean, the seat was, I would argue, at maximum, heat, I guess you could say, at the beginning of the year. It started to cool off a little bit with this recent success, but, are they still on that quote-unquote hot seat?
Only if they don't make the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, no matter what they do, I would think the jobs are safe. Unless they're embarrassed the first round or something like that. But I would think it's got to be playoffs or bust. A little bit like in Chicago with Jed Hoyer, GM with the Chicago Cubs. Same thing. Hey, you already went in and got Kyle Tucker. You better make the playoffs in that weak division, or else you could be whacked. Same thing last year of his contract. So that's why I think it's got to be playoffs or bust for a number of people in that organization.
Okay, playoffs or bust. Well, one of the other, I guess, bustable options, and they're save their jobs in this regard, was if they were to let Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit free agency. They didn't. They signed him 14 years, $500 million. Now we have a plethora of individuals that comment at us, that tweeted us, that message us. And anytime Vladdy has a bad game or a bad at-bat, which I will admit he did have a bad game yesterday, one of the worst games of his season so far. It was a rough one. But anytime that happens, everyone goes, that's not a $500 million man. That guy's overpaid. What are we doing? Let me get your personal opinion here. In kind of the climate of what is this financial baseball world that we're in right now, do you think that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is overpaid with that contract?
Remains to be seen. It's almost like, when we saw the Baltimore Orioles sign Chris Davis, years ago. That was a complete bust. So you really don't know until later in the contract, how he performs. Let's be honest. I mean, Guerrero and his agents took full advantage of the public relations storm. The Blue Jays had to have him. They knew that. Do they think he was worth 500? If I could have signed him for high 300s a year before, but didn't. But I think there was so much public relations pressure. And hey, the Rogers, communications, they got all the money in the world. So it's not like money coming out of the fans' pockets. It's just if they want to overpay someone, feel free to go ahead and do it. And
I know that
you've got to overpay to get guys to Toronto. I mean, Toronto is probably the most beautiful city in North America. Guys just don't like going through customs and playing north of the border. So I think the Blue Jays are in that disadvantage where they have to overpay guys to come and stay there.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say there, they definitely have all the money in the world because I have Rogers as my phone provider. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, every Canadian ever just paying into these guys. So we paid for Vladdy. We could say that.
You could argue that. Yeah.
Another guy that a lot of Blue Jay fans have been talking about wanting to pay this offseason is Bo Bichette. And I know last year he didn't have a good season. He was injured. And I remember actually you were talking about it too, that he's pretty much good as gone. And I think we all echoed that thought where he, it felt like he wasn't really gelling with the team.
Mentality wasn't there.
Felt like, he'd be getting interviews in San Francisco talking about how great the team is. Like, oh, it's pretty much gone. This year, though, we have a little bit of a different narrative where they're starting to win some ball games. He's doing it with Vlad now, who's extended. Where are you at right now with the Bo Bichette situation? Has things changed, or is this or is it still kind of like maybe he's good as gone because he does want to test out the free agent market?
Well, I think he definitely wants to test out the free agent market, and I think people still think he's going to leave. But you're stupid if you say, I'm not going to re-sign here. You got the fans turning on you, and you want the Blue Jays to make an offer. It's like, hey, even if guys don't want to play in New York and play for the Yankees, you got to say, hey, I want to be a Yankee just to make sure you got top bids. So I think the Bichette thing will play out that way too, where get the Blue Jays to make a strong offer. Then we'll see whether they really want to come back or not. But I don't think we'll really know that answer until come November.
Yeah.
At this current point, what's your evaluation just in terms of what a contract could look like for Bo Bichette? Because I feel like with that guy, considering he's obviously led the league in hits before, but also he's playing good baseball right now, but not necessarily the best baseball he's ever played. It's kind of a weird situation for him. You think it's a 1 year? Do you think it's a long-term contract? Where are you at with that?
Well, I think definitely a long-term contract. He's got to go long-term. He's so young where, you got to get your money now. So I still think he's going to get over, $200 million. He's not get the 340 that Trey Turner got. Xander Bogaerts got 280 from the Padres. He should certainly be in the $200 million range. But a long-term contract, at least 8-9 years.
No, I mean, that's fair. I mean, he finished off strong this year. He could get it to absolutely. I want to ask you a little bit of a pivot right here because, as baseball creators, and I'm sure you're very well aware of this too, there's something looming in the distance for all of us, and that is the upcoming CBA in 2026. What's the word on the street with like the CBA? Is that something that we should still be kind of worried about, what is right now being tossed around as like potential negotiation in that CBA, and like should we be worried that there could be a potential lockout?
Yeah, I have no reason to worry about it now, but this time next year, that's a big time worry.
Yeah,
because everybody's going to brace themselves for a long work stoppage after the 2026 season, a little bit like 94, 95. I don't think the players would go on strike like that's what happened then, canceling the World Series. I don't see that, but I think the owners, the players, even teams are bracing themselves for, okay, we're going to have a shutdown here because the owners want a salary cap, the players don't, and we'll see what happens. But I'd be surprised if we don't have some kind of labor stoppage in 2027, maybe a long one.
Yeah, and I find it so hard. I mean, maybe I'm on the outsider looking in, but I find it really hard that they're gonna get something done with a salary cap just based on how much power the MLBPA has, right? So do you think it could be work stoppage like 94 where we could potentially miss maybe a season if they really hold their ground?
Perhaps, at least maybe certainly a shortened season.
Yeah,
like a half a season like we had after the COVID year, something like that. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, everybody's kind of digging the trenches now. Everybody's already kind of posturing. There's been really no negotiations at all about this, and a lot of the owners are upset. And the big time owners, like the system the way it is, they're paying the taxes, but the small markets are kind of getting together and say, wait a minute now, we want to have the same type of revenue that the big boys have.
Right.
So particularly in TV, where it seems like the Dodgers get about $330 million a year from the local cable, when there's about 5 or 6 teams, again, about $30 million a year.
Right.
Okay. So watch out for that, folks. I wanted to circle back and get back to that pitching conversation that we were having right there. Around this time, often, you see a lot of articles come out being like the perfect fit for X, and, it's a team and then it's the player associated with it. Toronto, we are pretty sure we'll be going out and acquiring a starting pitcher. Is there anyone that you think on the market right now as it stands kind of fits or is the perfect fit for the Toronto Blue Jays in that starter role?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's that one perfect guy. I live in Phoenix, so I'm around the Diamondbacks a decent amount. Zach Gallen is pitching very well right now. He's got that East Coast mentality. He's from Philadelphia area. You look at his numbers against the Yankees and Mets this year. He's 3-0 with a 0.92 ERA. He loves facing the big boys, and I think he would thrive in that kind of market. Now you say that because I'm around him more than the other guys. I'm sure Seth Lugo can handle it. What you got to worry about is just some guys can be a little soft and can't handle a pennant race, can't handle an East Coast market like Toronto. Players will tell you, Boston's probably Philadelphia's probably the hardest place to play, then Boston, then New York, and then probably Toronto. I mean, it's a tough place to play. They'll jump on you if you don't perform.
I mean, listen, you kind of made the sale when you said that he kills the Yankees. That's all we need to hear, Bob.
No, seriously.
But he likes those moments. He really does. And it's hard to find those guys. I mean, I know when they come trade deadline or come free agent time, there's guys, the Yankees and Phillies in particular, stay away from, like, we don't think you can handle New York, or we don't think you can handle Philadelphia.
Right. And honestly, that's part of the reason why even though it was a lot of money and some people still talk about this, again, not my money, don't really care. That's why I liked when they brought in Max Scherzer. Cause like we had a game where he pitched against the Yankees. I'm like, this is built for Max Scherzer. This kind of moment right here. And the lights are bright. Yeah, I know he can only throw like 70 before he starts feeling his thumb again, but it's built for guys like that. They want to be in those games.
Yeah, they do. They're hard to find. And that's why, it's tougher for the big market teams back east to deal with that because the fans are different. You go to every player would tell you the easiest place in the world to play is St. Louis. They draw well. They're competitive year after year, and the fans are very forgiving. They do not jump on you unless you're dogging a ball or not running hard to first base. It's a very easy place to play where you better perform. Remember when Bryce Harper was in Philadelphia, signed a big contract. I was there the first week. I think by day 4, they're already booing him.
Wow.
I mean, Bryce Harper's built for that market now. Like he's the kind of guy that'll be built for that. That's crazy. He's boom after day 4.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the whole right-handed bat thing with Toronto, because along with the reports that Toronto's looking at starting pitching and looking at bullpen, which they certainly should be doing right now, I believe Ross Atkins also came out and said that they're going to be looking at targeting a right-handed bat. Anyone on the market that you think or you've heard could be making sense for the Toronto Blue Jays in that regard?
No big names. I mean, you don't hear about Eugenio Suarez there, at third base. You don't hear his name with Toronto.
Are you sure? Because that would be nice, Bob.
You hear about different places, and he'll be very coveted. It'd be a high price tag. He's a free agent too, and I will say he'll fit in any clubhouse. He's like one of the nicest guys in the world. So tremendous power. So who knows? Maybe he does end up there. But you can see more of a smaller type of guy, a Randall Grichuk type thing. Obviously, Blue Jays had him before.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. There's not that many big time bats out there. There really aren't to go get. Maybe 5 guys that are available. It was the off season. You get Castellanos from the Phillies, but they're not going to do it now during the season.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd be loving it if we got Randall Grichuk back. That guy had great numbers against Jays. Or against the Yankees. He had excellent numbers against the Yankees. Would love to see him back in Toronto. Also, I think that's pretty much what we got here. For
I had
one more.
I had one or two more because speaking of the Yankees, are you worried about them right now?
Whoa, time for a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video. Hit your picks and knock it out of the park with Betway. Scan the QR code down below to join the action. Only available in Ontario. Must be 19 years of older to participate. Please play responsibly. Now, everyone, back to the content.
Like just from, because obviously it's been a month of time where they've been tapering down, kind of on the decline here. Toronto's been on the upswing. Should Yankee fans be concerned?
Well, they are. There's some pressure in New York. I mean, they better make the playoffs, or then I think Aaron Boone would be in big time trouble. Team's built to win right now. They've had a ton of starting pitching injuries. So same thing. They're going to be after the same starters that Toronto is, same exact ones. So I think they got to go get one and get a bat too. They need a Suarez. They badly need a third baseman. They don't have one.
Yeah.
But moving
they just cut LeMahieu.
Second. Yeah, releasing LeMahieu this morning. So, no, I think they'll be very aggressive at the deadline because I think it'd be very embarrassing for them not to make the playoffs.
Yeah. And similar note, I guess, the other big market team, Dodgers on a 6-game losing streak. The Bats, I think they scored, 10 runs in the last 6 games?
10 runs, yeah.
Mookie obviously having a down year. Is there any concern there now that they're like pitching staff? I know they're getting a few guys back like Clase now. Any concern there for you?
They should get guys back. I mean, they need Blake Snell back. Then he'd fit in the rotation. Ohtani will be pitching, 5-6 innings by August, that sort of thing. So they'd like to get another reliever, bolster that bullpen, and maybe some bench help. But I don't see a big-time bat. Michael Conforto hasn't been the answer on left, but I don't see them, go grabbing another left fielder. So I think more toward the pitching side and build some depth there. They've already used they've used 36 pitchers already this year.
Wow. Yeah. And actually, you brought up a good point there. You're talking about relievers. That's another thing that every team needs. Every team needs a reliever. There's a couple names out there, and again, this is Twitter, this is X. People toss around names. Everyone's all fanboying or fangirling over these guys. Johan Duran on the Twins, Emmanuel Clase on the Guardians. Any odds that they get shipped, even though they got some control? What are the odds that they get shipped this trade deadline?
I think both teams will put those guys out there, and when they have control, they don't have to move them. So they'll have a high price tag and see who bites. As a few GMs have told me, you're going to get a lot more during the winter for those guys than now, because now you're just dealing with the contenders. And, come wintertime, even the non-contenders can bid on those guys. But, yeah, those would be the two guys at the top of the market. David Bednar. They always wonder about a guy coming from a small market to a big market, just how he'd perform under the pressure. So we'll see. But I think both those guys will be on the market. I don't know, how aggressive, those two teams, particularly Minnesota, will be dealing them, because the Twins are up for sale too. They don't want to just really upset the fans by start stripping away the team.
Yeah, no, that's super fair, man. I got two final questions for you. One of them actually pertains to the draft, which is coming up very, very soon. Blue Jays, they pick 8th overall. Is there any names that we should be specifically looking out for around that area, or Toronto Blue Jays fans should be aware of that, maybe you got your eye on would be good value, or just kind of best player available?
Well, sort of the best available. A lot of teams like the college pitchers because they can come up and help you right away. So the Witherspoon, there's twins, Clase and Malachi, but Clase is going to be a top 10 pick. I think the Blue Jays interviewed him, and they interviewed a lot of guys, but he'd be a guy to keep your eye on from the University of Oklahoma. Throws high 90s. He's a kid from Jacksonville, Florida. So he'd love the fact that spring training is right there in Dunedin. So keep your eye on him. It's a draft where there's no clear-cut number one. So the 8th pick could be as good as the first pick in this year's draft. This year's draft is a little down.
Okay. I mean, that's actually kind of exciting then. If you're saying 8th pick could be just as good as number one, I mean, it means could get that diamond in the rough. Final question for you before we let you go. Do you have any hot takes for this upcoming MLB trade deadline? Doesn't need to be Blue Jays related, but anything that, maybe you think could transpire that some of the other MLB analysts aren't really talking about right now?
I just think who's going to be the most aggressive. I still think Philadelphia with Dave Dombrowski there, he's going to trade away one of his top 2-3 prospects and say, we're going for this thing. I think the window is closing sooner than later because of those guys are starting to get older. And so I think you got to take advantage of what Wheeler's doing. And Ranger Suarez, who's a free agent at the end of the year, Christopher Sanchez, take advantage of that. So I think David Dombrowski will trade away a top prospect and really go for this thing. They need bullpen help. Seems like they always, Dave's teams always need bullpen help. They always have the great rotation, but the bullpen always comes back to haunt them. So I think they're going to pull in the biggest surprise.
Okay, I love it. Maybe Johan Duran. They actually ship out the entire top 3, top 4 of their system. They make it happen. They really convince the Twins. Bob, thank you so much for taking your afternoon here and talking with Blue Jays today. We really appreciate it. I know the fans out there really appreciate it as well. Yeah,
we'll be looking out for all your articles, all your reports as we get closer to the MLB trade deadline. And of course, shutting you out constantly. But thank you so much, dude. We appreciate it. Take care.
Look forward to seeing playoff baseball in Toronto once again.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah.
Awesome. Guys, that was Bob Nightingale. Honestly, great interview. If you guys want to go check out his articles and what he's got reporting, follow him on X and as well at USA Today. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please hit that like, smash the subscribe button. $4 a month from your YouTube membership. And thank you to all of our current YouTube members. You guys are amazing. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Jays, go!